Greed doesn't show up in your trading account looking evil. It doesn't announce itself. It whispers. It tells you that this trade is different. It tells you this one could change everything. It tells you to just hold a little longer. And that whisper is where your risk to reward ratio dies. You learn the math. Risk 1 to make 3. Risk 1% to make 3%. Simple, clean, professional. But what nobody tells you is that greed doesn't attack your strategy. It attacks your discipline. You enter the trade perfectly. Stop loss placed. Take profit set. You feel calm. The market moves in your favor. Plus 0.5 R. You feel good. Plus 1 R. Now your heart rate changes. Plus 1.5 R. Now your brain starts calculating what would happen if this goes to 5 R instead of 3 R. And that's when it begins. Why close at 3 R? This setup looks strong. Higher time frame trend is clean. Volume is increasing. Don't be weak. You cancel your take profit, not because your plan changed, because your emotions did. And you don't even realize that in that exact moment, your risk to reward ratio just collapsed. Greed doesn't only happen when you want more money. It happens when you refuse to accept enough. There's a difference. Enough is controlled. Greed is emotional. Enough follows a system. Greed follows imagination. You don't blow accounts because of bad entries. You blow accounts because you emotionally renegotiate your exits. You turn a 1 to 3 into a random outcome. You turn structure into hope. And hope is the most expensive thing in trading. Let's go deeper. Greed has stages. Stage 1 is subtle greed. That's when price reaches your take profit, and you hesitate. You think, what if it keeps going? So instead of closing, you move TP further. Now the market pulls back. You feel tension. You say, it's just a retracement. It keeps retracing. Now you're back at 1 R. Now your chest feels tight. Now you tell yourself, I should have closed. But you don't close. Because now greed transforms into ego. You want to be right. You want the full move. You want the screenshot. You want the story. And slowly, that 1 to 3 becomes break even. Or worse, and what hurts isn't the loss. It's knowing you had it. Greed makes winning painful. Think about that. You're not losing because the market is against you. You're losing because you cannot emotionally handle winning correctly. That's the dark truth. Now let's talk about small accounts, because greed is louder when the account is small. If you're trading $100, $200, $500, a 3R trade doesn't feel life-changing, so you want 10R, 20R, 50R. You don't want consistency, you want escape. You don't want profit, you want transformation. And that's why greed destroys your risk-to-reward ratio, because you're not trading to grow. You're trading to feel powerful. And power is addictive. When price runs strongly in your direction, dopamine hits. You feel invincible. You start thinking, I see the market clearly. I understand this. This is easy. That emotional high makes you blind. So next trade, you increase risk. You widen stop loss. You remove take profit completely. Let profits run. But that phrase is dangerous in the hands of someone undisciplined. Professionals let profits run inside structure. Amateurs let profits run inside fantasy. There's a difference. Greed convinces you that structure is limitation, that discipline is weakness, that taking profit early is fear. So you fight your own system. And when the market reverses violently, it feels like betrayal. But it wasn't betrayal. It was consequence. The market didn't change. You did. Now let's talk about the most destructive form of greed, revenge greed. After you miss a big move, after you close early and watch price explode without you, that pain burns. You feel stupid. You feel small. You promise yourself, next time I won't close early. So next time, you don't. And that next time is the one that reverses. Now the market isn't just taking money. It's attacking your identity. You start forcing trades, holding losers longer, refusing to cut losses, because in your mind, one big win will fix everything. But greed doesn't fix accounts. It empties them. Here's the part no one wants to admit. Sometimes you don't even want consistent profit. You want a story. You want to tell people, I caught 300 pips. I turned $200 into $2,000. I held from bottom to top. It's not about math, it's about validation. And validation destroys risk-to-reward discipline. Because validation requires extremes, consistency is boring. And your brain hates boring, so it creates chaos. It cancels TPs. It moves stop losses. It doubles positions mid-trade. It says, "This is the one." And that phrase has destroyed more accounts than bad strategy ever could. This is the one. There is no one. There is only repetition. But greed wants a breakthrough moment. Risk-to-reward ratio is built on probability. Greed is built on emotion, and emotion does not respect probability. Now let's expose something uncomfortable. You don't struggle with greed when you're losing. You struggle with greed when you're winning. When you're losing, you feel fear. When you're winning, you feel power. And power corrupts discipline. You start overriding your rules because you think you understand the flow. You feel synchronized with the market. But that synchronization is illusion. The market doesn't know you exist. It doesn't care about your 3R target. It doesn't reward patience emotionally. It rewards execution mechanically. And greed interrupts execution every time. Let's imagine something brutally honest. What if you followed your 1 to 3 system perfectly for 6 months? No moving targets, no widening stops, no emotional improvisation, just mechanical execution. You wouldn't feel like a genius. You wouldn't feel like a hero. You'd feel average, calm, bored, and that's why most traders fail. Because they don't want to feel average. They want to feel exceptional. Greed is the need to feel exceptional. And exceptional behavior in trading usually means inconsistent behavior. You know what professionals love? Predictability. You know what greedy traders love? Intensity. Intensity feels productive. But intensity destroys mathematical edge. Risk-to-reward ratio is not about making big money. It's about surviving long enough for probability to pay you. Greed shortens survival. It makes you skip small, consistent wins. It makes you hold too long. It makes you over-risk when confidence is high. And then one reversal wipes out 5 disciplined trades. That's how silent the damage is. It doesn't explode instantly. It erodes slowly. Until one day you look at your account and say, "How am I not profitable? My strategy works." Yes, your strategy works, but your emotional exits don't. And here is the darkest truth of all. Greed is often disguised as ambition. You tell yourself, "I just want more. I believe in my analysis. I trust the move." But deep down, you don't want more because the setup demands it. You want more because your life feels limited, because your income feels small, because your job feels draining, because you want out. So you try to force the market to accelerate your freedom, and the market punishes urgency every time. Risk-to-reward ratio is about accepting controlled gain. Greed is about rejecting controlled gain. One builds equity, the other builds regret. If you truly want to master trading, you must learn something brutal. Close the trade when your plan says close, not when your emotions say maybe, not when Twitter says hold, not when Telegram says target extended, when your system says close. That discipline will feel weak. It will feel small. It will feel like you're leaving money on the table. But what you're actually leaving on the table is chaos. Greed destroys risk-to-reward ratio because it destroys boundaries. And trading without boundaries is gambling with better vocabulary. So next time you're in profit, watch yourself. Watch the moment you hesitate to close. Watch the voice that says, "Just a little more." That voice is not confidence, it's hunger. And hunger in the market is dangerous. You don't need to eliminate greed. You need to recognize it and then act against it. That's the real discipline. That's the real power. Not catching the entire move, but consistently catching your move over and over, quietly, boringly, professionally. And if you can do that, greed stops controlling your risk to reward, and you finally start controlling your future. Now let's even go deeper, because greed isn't just about holding profits too long. It's about the identity you've secretly built around trading, and that identity is fragile. When you first discovered risk-to-reward ratio, it felt empowering. It felt professional. You finally had structure, finally had logic, finally had control. Risk 1 to make 3. Clean, mechanical, safe. But then reality happened. You realize that 1 to 3 doesn't mean you win every time. You realize you can lose 3 trades in a row. You realize you can follow the system perfectly and still watch your account dip before it grows. And that's when greed becomes louder than patience. Because patience doesn't give you emotional relief. Greed does. Let's talk about emotional relief. When you hold for more than your plan says, what are you really doing? You're trying to speed up certainty. You want one trade to validate you, one trade to prove you're not wasting time, one trade to silence the doubt. That's not strategy, that's insecurity. And insecurity cannot respect a fixed take profit. You start justifying. Structure hasn't broken. Momentum is strong. News could push this further. But if your original plan was 1 to 3, then anything beyond that is improvisation. Improvisation feels smart. It feels adaptive. But in most cases, it's just emotional reaction dressed as intelligence. Now let's expose something dangerous. Sometimes greed actually works. Sometimes you hold past 3R and it goes to 8R. Sometimes you move TP further and it hits. And that is the worst thing that can happen to you. Because now your brain is rewarded for breaking rules. Now your discipline feels unnecessary. Now your risk to reward structure feels restrictive. So next time, you do it again and again until the one time it reverses violently. And you give back not just profit, but confidence. This is how greed slowly rewires you. It teaches you that structure is optional, that intuition is superior, that rules are flexible, and flexibility without control becomes destruction. Let's talk about the internal conversation during a winning trade. Price is approaching your take profit. You stare at the screen, heart rate slightly elevated. You imagine closing, you imagine booking profit, and then you imagine what happens if it runs another 50 pips without you. That imagined pain feels worse than the real risk. So you hold. Notice that. You're not holding because of analysis. You're holding because of fear of missing out. FOMO is just greed in disguise. And FOMO doesn't care about your risk-to-reward model. It cares about emotional highs. Now imagine this scenario. You risk 1%, you aim for 3%, you hit 2.8%, price slows. You hesitate. You think, it's so close, but it never hits. It reverses, stops you at break-even, or worse. Now your mind replays the moment you could have closed, over and over. This replay creates frustration. Frustration creates impatience. Impatience creates impulsive trades. And suddenly, your risk-to-reward ratio is irrelevant because you're not even following it anymore. Greed doesn't just destroy one trade, it destroys emotional stability for the next 5. Now let's go darker. Why do you need more than 3R? Why does 3R feel small? Because your expectations are unrealistic. Social media has polluted your perception. You see screenshots of 20R trades, 50R trades. Accounts doubled in a week. Nobody posts the 1 to 3 trade closed calmly. Nobody celebrates boring consistency. So your brain gets conditioned to crave extremes. And when your trade only gives 3R, it feels average. And average feels like failure in a world addicted to highlights. But professional trading is average. Average entries, average exits, average emotions, repeated consistently. Greed hates average. It wants dramatic, and drama destroys risk-to-reward discipline. Now think about this. If you truly believed you could make steady 3R trades for the next 5 years, would you still chase 10R today? Probably not. The urgency would disappear. But you don't fully trust longevity, so you chase acceleration. Acceleration leads to overexposure. Overexposure leads to drawdown. Drawdown leads to emotional instability. And emotional instability makes risk to reward meaningless, because risk to reward only works if risk is fixed. Greed doesn't like fixed risk. When you're confident, you increase position size. When you feel certain, you double down. When you feel aligned, you remove stop loss because structure won't break. You see what's happening? Greed doesn't just attack take profit, it attacks stop loss too. You widen it, you justify it. You say, just a little more room. But more room isn't strategic, It's emotional cushioning. You're trying to avoid pain, but in avoiding small pain, you create catastrophic pain. That's the irony. Now let's address something brutal. Sometimes you don't close at 3R because deep down, you don't believe you deserve consistent profit. So you self-sabotage and you hold too long, you let it reverse. Then you say, I knew it. You confirm your own narrative that trading is hard, that you're unlucky, that the market is manipulated. But what really happened? You betrayed your own exit plan. Greed is often a mask for self-doubt. You don't trust small wins, you only trust massive wins, because massive wins feel like proof. Small wins feel temporary, but small wins stacked repeatedly become stability. Massive wins chased emotionally become volatility. Now imagine you treated every 3R as sacred, as untouchable, as the finish line. Imagine closing with zero hesitation, no second guessing, no extending, just click. Done. You would feel calm, but at first you would also feel uncomfortable. Because part of you enjoys the tension. Part of you enjoys the gamble. Part of you enjoys watching price move beyond your plan. Admit it. There's excitement in breaking your own rules. There's adrenaline in stretching targets. That adrenaline is addiction. And addiction has no respect for mathematics. Risk to reward ratio is mathematical. Greed is neurological. If you don't control your nervous system, you will never control your exits. Now let's confront the final uncomfortable truth. Greed is rooted in scarcity. If you truly believed opportunities are endless, you wouldn't squeeze one trade for everything. If you truly believe the market will be here tomorrow, you wouldn't act like this move is your only chance. A scarcity mindset turns normal trades into survival missions. And survival mode destroys rational thinking. You stop thinking in probabilities. You start thinking in desperation. And desperation and risk to reward cannot coexist. So what's the solution? It's not removing ambition. It's separating ambition from execution. Be ambitious about your long-term growth. Be mechanical about your short-term trades. Close at your planned R. Accept the boring win. Accept the consistent outcome. Detach from the fantasy of the perfect trade. There is no perfect trade. There is only executed plan or broken plan. And every time you choose discipline over greed, you're not just protecting your risk to reward. You're rebuilding your identity from emotional gambler to structured operator. And that shift is where real profitability begins.